Brexit weighed on British food exports to the EU at the beginning of the year. Continental Europe exports to the island could also become more difficult in the future. The so-called non-tariff barriers such as food certificates caused trade between the UK and the EU to decline dramatically in January. Food exports from the UK to the European Union fell by 3/4 in January compared to the same month last year. The British Food Association Food and Drink Federation, the FDF, announced that on Monday. Germany even recorded an above-average slump. It was 80%. The worst hit by the invasion of the EU is salmon, with a minus of 98%. The Scottish salmon industry had pointed out problems in the industry with border formalities at the end of 2020. Long waiting times at the borders are a big problem for the products. Beef with 91% and pork with 86% also recorded sharp export losses to the EU at the start of the year. The British export hit whiskey fell by 63%. According to the British Food Association, not only the trade barriers caused by Brexit, but also the storage of British companies in the EU is responsible for the export decline. Many of the companies replenished their stocks before leaving the internal market and customs union at the turn of the year. The export slump to the EU is extremely worrying, said Dominic Gaudy, who is responsible for international trade at the FDF. Companies are confronted with considerable challenges when they trade with the EU, said Gaudy, I always say Gaudi if it's spelled like this because of Gouda. A weakening of trade in the opposite direction is likely next year at the latest, according to the association. Because if the UK carries out its goods controls in the coming year, EU exports to the British island would also be made more difficult. Various transition periods currently still apply. However, the UK's food imports from the EU are already affected. In January, they fell by around a third compared to the same month last year. It was already suspected that Brexit would not exactly be a turbo booster for the movement of goods between the UK and the EU. How much the exit would reduce exports, and not just for the whiskey industry, is only now slowly becoming apparent. And the negative effects are enormous. As I said, the whiskey industry has exported 63% less to the EU since Brexit. Instead of 105 million euros, exports have only made up 40 million since the beginning of the year, reports The Guardian. And other industries are even more affected. Cheese exports plummeted by 84%, beef by 92%, salmon by 98%, as I said, and overall trade between the EU and the UK fell by more than 40% in January compared with December. Of course, the lower demand caused by the pandemic also has its share in these partly catastrophic values. But when you look at the difficulties importers and customers have to face when ordering, for example, whiskey in the UK, the vehemence of the crash is probably due in large part to the uncertainties owed after Brexit. By the way, exports to Ireland are minus 85% and Germany minus 80% and are very special. You can only hope, in the interest of both parties, that these trade relations will recover quickly and sustainably. And then the largest undercover research to date in the Scottish salmon industry has uncovered enormous industry-wide animal suffering, high mortality rate, and violations of animal welfare laws. Film footage and the accompanying report show the sad reality for many fish in the sea cages. They were published by more than 40 animal welfare organizations in over 30 countries, including the Albert Schweitzer Foundation for the Environment. The network protests against the conditions and further growth of salmon farming in Scotland. Scotland is the third largest producer of farmed Atlantic salmon worldwide, approximately 38 million fish in 2019, and exports it to over 50 countries. Germany is the sixth largest customer. In 2019, 2,800 tons of salmon were imported from Scotland. The Scottish government supports massive growth in industry that is expected to occur by 2030. Over 96% of Scottish salmon production is handled by 5 companies: Mowi, Scottish Sea Farms, Greek Seafood, the Scottish Salmon Company, and Cook Aquaculture. With the help of drone technology and divers, over 22 farms were examined between September and November 2020. During the research, which was conducted by the animal welfare organization Compassion in World Farming International, the investigators discovered massive grievances. The salmon are locked in desolate and narrow underwater cages. Here the animals, which travel several thousand kilometers in the wild, swim around aimlessly for up to 2 years. Up to a quarter of the salmon die before they are slaughtered, and that's a lot. The footage shows how badly the salmon are doing in the Scottish factory farming in the sea, says Diana von Webel, head of communication and politics at the Albert Schweitzer Foundation. Many of the animals are sick and injured. Sea lice eat the salmon alive. Sometimes the animals lack eyes and entire pieces of meat. Salmon are sentient creatures. They say these housing conditions are completely unacceptable. There is an industry-wide failure in protecting these animals, and that has to change, they say. We need an immediate halt to growth for these salmon farms. Sea lice are small crustaceans that feed on the skin, blood and secretions of fish. Their numbers have grown explosively with the expansion of the salmon industry. So far, the salmon farms have not yet introduced an effective animal welfare-friendly and environmentally friendly treatment or prevention method, Albert Schweitzer said. The methods that the industry has developed to rid the fish of sea lice are cruel and ineffective, for example, chemical baths or treatments with delousing machines. That's thermolyzer and hydrolyzer. Many fish die after these procedures, according to the association. Salmon farming is not only harmful to animals, but also to the environment, they say. Waste from Scottish salmon farms changes the chemical makeup of the sediments and kills life on the ocean floor, they say. In addition, the waste can lead to poor water quality and harmful algal blooms. Medicines and chemicals such as antibiotics and insecticides are also released into the environment. They say many of them are known to be toxic to fish and other marine organisms, as well as birds and mammals. In addition, the breeding of predatory fish, such as salmon, responsible for a large part of the industry fishing in our already overfished oceans. Millions of tons of wild-caught fish are made into fish meal, fish oil to feed fish in agriculture. And they say, given the numerous animal welfare and environmental problems in the Scottish salmon industry, the current growth plans are completely irresponsible, said in this case Diana von Webel. We are calling on the Scottish Government to put in place a moratorium on industry growth. Caging predatory fish in underwater cages and emptying our oceans to feed them is sheer madness, they say. Ultimately, we have to ask ourselves whether salmon farming is even part of a sustainable food system and can have a place there. This form of fish farming is associated with serious animal welfare and environmental problems. Organizations around the world are therefore calling for a first step to stop the growth of industry. And as I said, that's why I often said, she said, they said, I'm not an expert on that, so I could only give you their view. Of course, this is a specialized association, so they have a biased view as the industry will have theirs. But still, I wanted to bring you that view. I have not visited one of those farms myself, so I cannot really comment on that one. But I still wanted to know what the association has to say. And if you want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel. Auf Wiedersehen.